The Zorathians thought they were unstoppable. They were tall, scaly creatures with sharp claws and glowing red eyes, rulers of a massive empire that stretched across the stars. On their dusty outer colony, a dry, sandy place called Zikra, they decided to show everyone how strong they were. In the middle of a wide, open square, where their shiny blue banners flapped in the wind, they gathered 10 humans. These humans were just regular people, teachers, farmers, and engineers, who had come to Zikra to trade goods or help build homes. The Zorathians didn't care who they were. They pointed at the humans, laughed, and called them weak. "Look at these tiny creatures," they sneered. "They're nothing compared to us." The square was packed with Zorathian soldiers, their armor glinting under the 2 suns of Zikra. Crowds of locals watched from the edges, curious but quiet. The Zorathians wanted to make a big show. They thought hurting the humans would prove their power to the whole galaxy. So without asking questions or giving the humans a chance to speak, they did something awful. They ended the lives of all 10 humans right there in the square. No trial, no names, just silence. The Zorathians expected everyone to cheer or bow down to their strength. They thought no one would care about a few humans from a small planet called Earth. But they were wrong, very wrong. High above Zikra in the black emptiness of space, a tiny satellite spun quietly. It was a human satellite, small enough that the Zorathians didn't notice it. That satellite recorded everything. Every cruel word, every mean laugh, every terrible moment in that dusty square. The signal from the satellite zipped across the stars, bouncing from one relay to another until it reached Earth. People on Earth saw what happened. They didn't just see it, they felt it. Families, friends, and leaders on Earth were angry, sad, and ready to do something about it. The galaxy wasn't as quiet as the Zorathians thought. Eyes were watching, hearts were breaking, and plans were starting. The Zorathians didn't know it yet, but their big mistake was thinking humans were weak. They didn't understand what humans were capable of. On Zikra, the soldiers cleaned up the square and went back to their shiny ships, laughing about how easy it was. They thought Earth was too far away to care, too small to fight back. But Earth was already listening. Messages were flying through space, not just to Earth but to other planets too. Aliens who traded with humans who had learned to respect them were hearing the news. Whispers spread through space stations and markets. The Zorathians had gone too far. Back on Zikra, the wind blew dust across the now empty square. The banners still waved, but they didn't seem as proud anymore. Something heavy hung in the air, like the feeling before a big storm. The Zorathians didn't notice it. They were busy celebrating, thinking they had won. They didn't know that their actions had lit a spark. That spark was small at first, but it was growing, moving faster than their fastest ships. It was the spark of human determination, and it was headed straight for them. The humans who were hurt weren't just random people. They were loved. They had families waiting for them, friends who shared meals with them, and neighbors who knew their names. One of them, a young woman named Leela, was a teacher who told stories to kids about the stars. She had come to Zikra to help set up a school for alien children. Another, an older man named Tom, was a farmer who grew food that fed hundreds. He had a big laugh that made everyone smile. Each of the 10 had a life, a purpose, and people who cared about them. The Zorathians didn't think about that. They didn't think about the pain they caused or the anger they created. They thought humans were like ants, easy to step on. But ants can bite and humans can do much more. Far away on a green and blue planet called Earth, people were gathering. In small towns and big cities, they watched the video from the satellite. Mothers hugged their kids tighter. Fathers clenched their fists. Leaders sat in quiet rooms, their faces serious. They didn't shout or cry. They didn't need to. They knew what had to be done. The Zorathians thought they could scare humans, make them hide. Instead, they woke something up. Something strong. Something that wouldn't stop until justice was done. The Zorathians had their empire, their ships, and their claws. They thought they were the kings of the galaxy. But they forgot one thing: humans don't give up. Even when they're hurt, even when they're small, humans find a way. The square in Zikra was silent now, but that silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The galaxy was watching, not just with pity, but with curiosity. What would Earth do? What could a small planet do against a giant empire? The Zorathians didn't think Earth could do anything. They didn't know that Earth was already moving, planning and preparing. In the days after the awful event, the Zorathians went about their business. They sent ships to other colonies, traded goods, and built more weapons. They thought the galaxy would forget about the 10 humans. They thought Earth would stay quiet, too scared to act. But they didn't know Earth. They didn't know the people who lived there, the ones who built cities, explored stars, and never forgot their friends. The Zorathians thought they had won a small victory in that dusty square. Instead, they had started something much bigger than they could imagine. On Earth, the news spread like fire. People didn't just hear about the 10 humans, they felt their loss. In a small town, a girl named Mia, Leela's little sister, watched the video and cried. But then she stopped crying and wrote a letter to her government. "Do something," she wrote. "Don't let them get away with this." In a city across the ocean, Tom's best friend, a pilot named Jadden, looked at the stars and promised to fight back. All over Earth, people were making promises, not with words but with actions. They weren't loud about it. They didn't need to be. The Zorathians thought silence meant weakness. They were about to learn it meant strength. The Zorathians had their moment in the square, their chance to feel big and powerful. They thought they could push humans around and no one would care. But the galaxy wasn't as empty as they thought. Other aliens, ones who had worked with humans, started talking. On a trading station near Zikra, a furry creature called a Vren told his friends, "Humans don't forget. They'll come for the Zorathians." On another planet, a merchant with 6 arms stopped selling to Zorathian ships. The galaxy was starting to shift, and the Zorathians didn't even notice. Back on Zikra, the square was empty now, but the memory of what happened there wasn't gone. The dust might have settled, but the story was just beginning. The Zorathians thought they had shown their strength. Instead, they had shown their cruelty. And cruelty has a way of coming back to bite you. Earth was listening, and Earth was ready. The Zorathians thought they were the hunters. They didn't know they were about to become the hunted. The humans weren't going to march into Zikra with big ships and loud bombs. That wasn't their way. They were smarter than that. They were quiet, careful, and clever. The Zorathians thought they knew everything about humans. They thought humans were small, soft, and easy to break. But they didn't know about the fire inside humans, the kind that burns brighter when things get tough. That fire was growing now, spreading from one heart to another, from one planet to the next. The Zorathians thought they had won. They thought the story was over, but it was only the first page. The galaxy watched, waiting to see what would happen next. The Zorathians went on with their lives, building their empire, waving their banners. They didn't see the shadow moving closer. They didn't hear the whispers of plans being made. They didn't feel the change in the air, but it was there. Earth was coming, not with noise, not with anger, but with something stronger, purpose. The Zorathians thought they could crush humans and walk away. They were about to learn what happens when you hurt the wrong people. The 10 humans the Zorathians hurt weren't just random people. Each one had a story, a life, and someone who loved them deeply. These weren't just faces in a crowd. They were teachers, builders, dreamers, and friends. They had families waiting for them, people who looked up to them, and others who would never forget them. The Zorathians thought they could make these humans disappear and no one would care. But they didn't know the truth. Every single one of those humans was connected to someone powerful, someone who would make sure the galaxy remembered their names. One of the humans was Layla, a young teacher with a bright smile. She was the older sister of Mia, a brilliant scientist who built Earth's fastest spaceships. Leela loved telling stories to kids about the stars, teaching them how to dream big. She had come to Zikra to start a school for alien children, hopping to share stories of Earth with them. Mia, back on Earth, was working on a new ship that could travel faster than light. When she heard what happened to Leela, her heart broke, but her mind sharpened. She wasn't just sad, she was determined. Mia's ships weren't just machines. They were her way of fighting back, and she was ready to use them. Another human was Tom, a farmer with a big laugh that could fill a room. He grew food that fed hundreds of people on Zikra and other planets. Tom was best friends with Jadden, a pilot who flew dangerous missions across the stars. Jadden wasn't just any pilot. He was one of Earth's best, someone who could steer a ship through a storm of asteroids without blinking. Tom and Jadden had grown up together, sharing dreams of exploring new worlds. When Jadden learned what the Zorathians did to Tom, he didn't cry. He got quiet, and that was scarier. Jadden started checking his ship, making sure it was ready for whatever came next. Then there was Aisha, a quiet woman who fixed machines. She could take a broken engine and make it hum like new. Aisha was loved by her cousin, Zara, a commander who led Earth's biggest space fleet. Zara was tough, the kind of person who made aliens nervous just by walking into a room. She had fought in battles against pirates and rogue robots, always keeping her people safe. Aisha wasn't a soldier, but she was Zara's heart. When Zara heard about Aisha, she didn't shout or make threats. She just called her team together and started planning. The Zorathians had no idea who they'd made angry. Another human was Carlos, a young man who built homes for people on new planets. He had a knack for making strong, cozy houses out of almost anything. Carlos was the son of Elena, a hacker who could slip into any computer system without leaving a trace. Elena was famous on Earth for stopping alien spies who tried to steal human secrets. She loved Carlos more than anything, always telling him to be careful on faraway planets. When Elena saw the video of what happened on Zikra, her fingers froze on her keyboard. Then they started moving faster than ever. She wasn't going to let the Zorathians get away with this. There was also May, a nurse who helped sick people feel better. She had a gentle voice and a way of making anyone smile, even on their worst day. May was the best friend of Kofi, a leader who spoke for Earth at galaxy meetings. Kofi was known for his calm words and sharp mind. He could convince entire planets to work together. May was the one who kept him grounded, reminding him to laugh and rest. When Kofi heard about May, his calm face turned hard. He walked into a meeting room with other leaders and said, "We need to act, now." The Zorathians didn't know they'd hurt someone Kofi would fight for. Another human was Sam, a musician who played songs that made people feel brave. His music traveled across planets, carried by traders and explorers. Sam was the brother of Lena, an engineer who built giant space stations. Lena's stations were like floating cities, places where people from all over the galaxy could live and work. She was proud of Sam, always playing his music while she worked. When Lena learned what happened to Sam, she stopped her latest project. She turned to her team and said, "We're building something new now, something to make them pay." Lena's mind was already designing a plan. There was also Priya, a young woman who studied plants. She knew how to grow food in places where nothing should grow, like the sandy soil of Zikra. Priya was the daughter of Raj, a general who trained Earth's toughest soldiers. Raj was a man of few words, but his soldiers trusted him with their lives. Priya was his pride, always sending him pictures of her gardens. When Raj saw what the Zorathians did, he didn't yell. He just walked to his training field and started preparing his team. The Zorathians had no clue they made an enemy of someone like Raj. Another human was Jamal, a chef who cooked meals that brought people together. His food was so good that even aliens loved it. Jamal was the nephew of Amina, a scientist who studied black holes. Amina was famous for finding ways to use star energy to power Earth's cities. She and Jamal used to talk for hours about food and stars. When Amina heard about Jamal, her lab went quiet. She put down her tools and started working on something new, something that could send a message to the Zorathians. Amina wasn't just a scientist, she was a protector. There was also Emma, a librarian who collected stories from every planet. She had a quiet strength, always helping people find answers in her books. Emma was the sister of Noah, a spy who worked in secret to keep Earth safe. Noah could sneak into any place, hear any secret, and vanish like a shadow. Emma was the one who taught him to be brave. When Noah learned about Emma, he didn't say a word. He just slipped into the darkness, already planning his next move. The Zorathians didn't know a shadow was coming for them. Finally, there was Liam, a kid barely older than you. He was a dreamer, always drawing pictures of spaceships and alien worlds. Liam was the son of Sophia, a diplomat who made peace between planets. Sophia was good at talking, but she was even better at listening. She knew how to make people trust her. Liam was her joy, always showing her his drawings. When Sophia heard about Liam, her calm voice shook for the first time. She called her team together and said, "This isn't just about Earth. This is about family." Sophia's words started something big. Each of these humans, Leela, Tom, Aisha, Carlos, May, Sam, Priya, Jamal, Emma, and Liam, was special. They weren't soldiers or leaders. They were people who built, helped, and dreamed. But they were loved by people who were powerful in their own way. Mia the scientist, Jadon the pilot, Zara the commander, Alina the hacker, Kofi the leader, Lena the engineer, Raj the general, Amina the scientist, Noah the spy, and Sophia the diplomat. These were the ones who would make the Zorathians regret what they did. The Zorathians thought they could hurt strangers and walk away. They didn't know they'd hurt the wrong people. These powerful people weren't just angry, they were focused. They didn't want to start a war or destroy planets. They wanted justice. They wanted the galaxy to know that humans weren't weak, that humans cared about each other, and that humans would fight for their own. The Zorathians thought they could laugh and move on, but the people they hurt had left behind a legacy. Their families and friends were already moving, talking, planning. The Zorathians had no idea what was coming. On Earth, the news of the 10 humans spread fast. People gathered in homes, schools, and town halls. They talked about Leela's stories, Tom's laugh, Aisha's machines, and all the others. They didn't just mourn, they got ready. The Zorathians thought they'd scared Earth into silence. Instead, they'd woken up a planet full of people who wouldn't forget. The humans weren't going to shout or make big speeches. They were going to act, and their actions would speak louder than any words. The Zorathians had their empire, their ships, and their pride. They thought they could do whatever they wanted, but they didn't know the humans they hurt. They didn't know the love, the strength, and the determination those humans left behind. The galaxy was starting to notice. Aliens who knew the humans, merchants, traders, friends, began to whisper. "Earth won't let this go," they said. The Zorathians made a mistake. And they were right. The 10 humans weren't just victims. They were the spark that would light a fire that would burn all the way to Zikra. The humans didn't shout or send angry messages to the Zorathians. They didn't need to. Instead, they started to act, quietly and carefully, like a shadow moving in the dark. The Zorathians had hurt 10 people on their dusty colony of Zikra, thinking no one would care. But the humans cared, and they were ready to show it, not with loud words but with clever actions. Something was starting, something the Zorathians couldn't see yet, and it was going to change everything. Far out in space, near a quiet corner of the galaxy, a Zorathian ship sailed through the stars. It was a big cargo ship loaded with supplies like food and fuel for their colonies. The crew was relaxed, joking about how easy their job was. Then, without warning, the ship's lights flickered. The engines stopped humming. The screens went black. The crew scrambled to fix it, but nothing worked. The ship just floated there, silent and still, like a toy with no batteries. No one saw what happened. No other ships were nearby. It was as if the stars themselves had swallowed the ship. The Zorathians back on Zikra heard about it and shrugged. "Bad luck," they said. "It happens." But it wasn't luck. Few days later, on a busy Zorathian supply station, something else went wrong. This station was like a giant space mall where ships stopped to pick up tools, parts, and food. It was always buzzing with activity, robots loading crates, workers shouting orders, screens flashing updates. Then one morning the whole place went quiet. The power shut off. The robots froze. The screens turned dark. Workers tried to turn things back on, but every button they pressed did nothing. Supplies stopped moving. Ships couldn't dock. The station was stuck like a car with no gas. The Zorathians sent engineers to fix it, but they couldn't find the problem. It was as if the station had just decided to sleep. The Zorathians laughed again. "Another glitch," they said. "We'll fix it soon." But they didn't. On Earth, people weren't laughing. They were working. In small rooms and hidden bases, humans were making plans. These weren't big, noisy plans with flashing lights or loud speeches. They were quiet, smart plans, the kind that sneak up on you. Mia, the scientist who lost her sister Leela, was at her desk, typing fast on her computer. She was designing a tiny device, smaller than a coin, that could slip into Zorathian systems and turn them off. Jadon, the pilot who lost his friend Tom, was flying a small ship, testing new ways to move without being seen. Zara, the commander who lost her cousin Aisha, was training her team to move fast and quiet, like ghosts in space. Each of them was doing something small, but together those small things were adding up. The Zorathians didn't notice the pattern yet. They were too busy running their empire, sending ships to new planets and counting their money, but more things started to go wrong. A Zorathian outpost on a rocky moon lost its connection to the main colony. No messages could get in or out. The soldiers there waited for help, but none came. Another time, a Zorathian factory that made weapons stopped working. The machines just shut down, and no one could figure out why. The Zorathians sent their best workers to check, but everything looked fine until they tried to start the machines again. Nothing. The factory sat empty, its lights off, its tools quiet. These weren't accidents. Humans were behind every single one. Elena, the hacker who lost her son Carlos, was sitting in a dark room, her computer screen glowing. She was sneaking into Zorathian systems, turning off their power with a few clicks. Noah, the spy who lost his sister Emma, was slipping onto Zorathian ships, planting tiny devices that made them stop working. He moved so quietly that no one ever saw him. Lena, the engineer who lost her brother Sam, was building tools that could jam Zorathian signals, making their radios and screens go silent. Each human was doing something different, but they all had the same goal: make the Zorathians pay attention. The Zorathians still didn't take it seriously. They thought these problems were just bad luck, like a rainy day or a flat tire. They laughed about it in their shiny meeting rooms, their claws clicking on the tables. Humans, they said, they're too small to cause trouble. This is just a coincidence. But it wasn't a coincidence. Every broken ship, every dark station, every quiet factory was part of a plan. The humans weren't fighting with guns or bombs. They were fighting with brains, with patience, and with a fire in their hearts that wouldn't go out. Back on Earth, more people joined the effort. Kofi, the leader who lost his friend May, was talking to other planets. He didn't beg or yell, he just told them what the Zorathians did. Aliens who liked humans, like the furry Vren or the six-armed merchants, started to listen. Some stopped trading with the Zorathians. Others shared secrets about Zorathian ships and bases. Kofi's words were like seeds, planting ideas in the galaxy's mind. The Zorathians thought they ruled everything, but they were starting to lose friends. Meanwhile, Raj, the general who lost his daughter Priya, was training his soldiers in new ways. He taught them how to move without being seen, how to fix machines fast, and how to stay calm no matter what. His soldiers weren't just strong, they were smart. They practiced on old ships, learning how to take them apart and put them back together. Raj knew the Zorathians had big armies, but he also knew humans could be cleverer. He wasn't planning a big battle. He was planning something sneakier, something that would surprise the Zorathians. Amina, the scientist who lost her nephew Jamal, was working on something special. She was building a signal that could confuse Zorathian computers. It was like a secret code that made their machines think everything was fine, even when it was. Amina tested her signal on a small Zorathian drone that had crashed near Earth. The drone's lights blinked, then went dark. Amina smiled. Her plan was working. She sent her signal to other humans, who hid it in tiny devices that could be carried anywhere. Sophia, the diplomat who lost her son Liam, was traveling to other planets. She met with alien leaders, showing them the video from Zikra. Her voice was calm, but her words were strong. "The Zorathians think they can hurt anyone," she said. "But we're not alone, we're together." Her words made aliens think. Some started to help, sending supplies or information to Earth. Others just stopped talking to the Zorathians. Sophia's trips were quiet, but they were making waves. The Zorathians kept losing things. A supply ship carrying medicine never reached its destination. A communication tower on a desert planet stopped sending signals. A Zorathian bank found its computers frozen, unable to send or receive money. Each time the Zorathians sent teams to investigate, but they found nothing. No clues, no tracks, no answers. They started to get annoyed. "Who's doing this?" they asked. They still didn't think it was the humans. They thought it was a rival empire or maybe a glitch in their machines. They didn't know the truth. Humans were everywhere, working together, striking small but sharp blows. On Earth, the humans kept their plans secret. They didn't tell the news or post about it online. They worked in small groups, sharing only what they needed to know. Mia's devices were sent to Jadden's ship, which flew them to Zorathian space. Alina's hacks were shared with Noah, who used them to sneak into more systems. Lena's signal jammers were given to Raj's soldiers, who planted them on Zorathian outposts. Everyone had a job and everyone did it well. They didn't need to be loud. They just needed to be smart. The Zorathians started to notice that things weren't going back to normal. Their ships kept breaking. Their stations kept shutting down. Their people were starting to whisper, wondering what was wrong, but they still laughed. Humans, they said. No way, they're too weak. They didn't know that every glitch was a step in a bigger plan. They didn't see the net closing around them. The humans weren't fighting like the Zorathians expected. They weren't sending big fleets or making big threats. They were doing small things, clever things, things that added up. The galaxy was starting to talk. Aliens who had seen the video from Zikra were spreading the word. The humans are doing something, they said. The Zorathians aren't as strong as they think. Some aliens sent messages to Earth, offering help. Others just watched, waiting to see what would happen. The Zorathians didn't hear these whispers. They were too busy fixing their broken machines and yelling at their workers. But the whispers were growing louder and the humans were moving faster. The small actions kept coming. A Zorathian satellite stopped sending pictures. A fuel depot ran dry even though it was supposed to be full. A Zorathian general's personal ship lost power in the middle of a trip, leaving him stranded for days. Each time the Zorathians got a little more nervous. They stopped laughing as much. They started checking their systems, looking for answers. But the humans were too quick, too quiet. They were like water slipping through cracks, finding every weak spot. The humans knew they couldn't stop yet. They were just starting. Every broken ship, every dark station was a message to the Zorathians. You heard us and we're not forgetting. The Zorathians thought they were in control, but they were wrong. The humans were showing them that small actions could be powerful. They were showing them that 10 lives mattered. And they were just getting started. General Vark, a tall Zorathian with scales that shimmered like dark metal, sat in his command center on Zikra. His red eyes narrowed as he stared at a glowing screen. For weeks, strange things had been happening across the Zorathian Empire. Ships stopped working, supply stations went dark, factories shut down. At first, Vark and his officers laughed it off, calling it bad luck or broken machines. But now, as he looked at the reports piling up, Vark felt a cold knot in his stomach. Something was wrong, very wrong. These weren't just accidents. There was a pattern and it was starting to scare him. The command center was a huge room filled with blinking screens and busy Zorathian workers. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, showing their many colonies and ships. Vark was used to feeling in control here. He had led the Zorathians for years, winning battles and building their empire. But now, as he read the latest report, his claws tapped nervously on the table. A cargo ship had vanished near a quiet star. A communication tower on a desert moon had stopped sending signals. A bank's computers had frozen, locking up money. Each problem seemed small, but together they felt like a storm brewing. Vark called his top officers to the room. They stood tall, their armor shining under the bright lights. "Tell me what's happening," Vark growled, his voice low and sharp. One officer, a young Zorathian named Krez, stepped forward with a tablet. "Sir, the problems are spreading," Krez said. "Another outpost lost power yesterday. No explosions, no attacks, just silence. We sent a team to check, but they found nothing broken. The systems just stopped." Vark's eyes narrowed. "Nothing broken?" he asked. Krez nodded. "It's like someone turned them off on purpose." Vark leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. He remembered the day in the dusty square on Zikra when they hurt those 10 humans. He had thought it was a simple way to show the galaxy how strong the Zorathians were. Humans were small, weak, and far away. He didn't think they could fight back. But now, as he looked at the reports, a new thought crept into his mind. What if the humans were behind this? He shook his head. It seemed impossible. Humans didn't have big armies or powerful weapons like the Zorathians. But the idea wouldn't go away. Another officer, a grizzled Zorathian named Taz, spoke up. "Sir, it's not just our systems. Our trade partners are acting strange. The Vren stopped sending us fuel. The six-armed merchants canceled their order. They won't say why." Vark's claws tapped faster. The Vren and the merchants were old allies, always happy to make money with the Zorathians. Why would they stop now? Taz held up a small device, a broken Zorathian communicator. "We found this on one of our ships," he said. "It's not ours, it's human-made. It was sending signals somewhere else." Vark's heart beat faster. A human device on a Zorathian ship. Vark stood and paced the room. His officers watched, their eyes wide. They weren't used to seeing their general nervous. "Bring me all the reports," Vark ordered. "Every ship, every station, every problem. I want to see the pattern." His workers scrambled, pulling up files and maps. Soon the main screen showed a list of every strange event. A fuel depot that ran dry, a satellite that stopped working, a factory that went quiet. Vark stared at the list, his mind racing. The problems weren't random. They happened in a careful order, like pieces of a puzzle clicking together. Someone was planning this. Someone smart. Krez pointed at the screen. "Look here, sir," he said. "The outages started near Zikra right after the square." Vark froze. The square, the 10 humans. He had thought no one cared about them, but now he wasn't so sure. "Are you saying the humans did this?" he asked, his voice sharp. Krez hesitated. "I don't know, sir, but the timing, it's too perfect." Vark growled, his claws digging into the table. "Humans, those tiny creatures, they can't do this." But deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. The room grew quiet. The officers looked at each other, unsure what to say. Vark sat back down, staring at the map of the galaxy. He thought about the humans. He had seen their kind before, small, soft, always talking about peace. He had laughed at them, thinking they were no threat. But now, as he looked at the growing list of problems, he felt a chill. What if he had been wrong? What if the humans weren't scared? What if they were fighting back in a way he didn't understand? Vark sent his officers out to investigate. "Check every ship, every station," he ordered. "Find out how they're doing this." His workers rushed out, but Vark stayed in the command center, staring at the screen. He pulled up an old report about Earth. It described a small planet full of people who built things, explored stars, and never gave up. He hadn't paid attention to it before. Now he read every word. The humans were clever, the report said. They worked together. They cared about each other. Vark's claws tightened. Had he made a mistake? Outside the command center, the Zorathian Empire was starting to feel the strain. On a trading planet, a Zorathian captain tried to buy fuel, but the seller shook his head. "No deal," the seller said. "We don't trust you anymore." The captain argued, but the seller walked away. On another planet, a Zorathian outpost ran out of food. The workers there sent messages to Zikra asking for help, but no ships came. The messages stopped going through. The outpost was cut off, alone in the dark. Back in the command center, Vark got a new report. A Zorathian warship, one of their biggest, had lost power in deep space. The crew was stranded, floating with no way to call for help. Vark slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't luck," he shouted. "This is an attack." His officers nodded, but they didn't know what to do. They were used to fighting enemies with guns and ships, not enemies who made things stop working without a sound. Vark called a meeting with his top advisors. They gathered around a long table, their faces serious. "We need to find out who's doing this," Vark said, "and stop them." One advisor, an old Zorathian named Syl, spoke carefully. "Sir, what if it is the humans? We did something to them on Zikra. Maybe this is their answer." Vark glared at her. "Humans fight us, they don't have the power." But Syl didn't back down. "They don't need big ships, sir. They're doing this with tricks, with plans. We need to be careful." Vark didn't want to believe it. He wanted to think it was another empire, someone with big weapons and loud threats. But the more he thought, the more it made sense. The humans weren't fighting like the Zorathians. They weren't sending armies or blowing things up. They were quiet, sneaky, and smart. They were hitting the Zorathians where it hurt: ships, supplies, money. Vark felt his confidence slip. He had always thought he knew his enemies. Now he wasn't sure he knew the humans at all. The reports kept coming. A Zorathian space dock where ships were built went dark. Workers there said the tools just stopped. No one could find the problem. On another colony, a water system shut off, leaving thousands thirsty. The Zorathians sent repair teams, but they came back empty-handed. "It's like the machines are haunted," one worker said. Vark didn't believe in ghosts, but he was starting to feel haunted by something else: doubt. He sent a message to his spies across the galaxy. "Find out what the humans are doing," he ordered. "Watch their planet, watch their ships." The spies sent back reports, but they were confusing. Earth looked quiet, no big armies were moving, no giant ships were launching. The humans were going about their lives, building, trading, talking, but Vark knew better now. That quiet wasn't weakness. It was a mask. The humans were planning something, and they were good at hiding it. The Zorathians started to argue among themselves. Some officers wanted to attack Earth to show them who was stronger. "Send our fleet," they said, "crush them." But Vark wasn't so sure. Attacking a planet was loud and messy. The humans weren't fighting that way. If he sent ships, would they even find anything, or would they fall into another human trick? Vark's head hurt. He wasn't used to feeling this way. He was a general, a leader, a ruler. But now he felt like he was chasing shadows. The galaxy was starting to notice the Zorathians' problems. Alien traders whispered about the broken ships and dark stations. "The Zorathians are losing control," they said. Some aliens sent messages to Earth offering help. Others just watched, waiting to see what would happen. Vark heard the whispers and felt his anger grow. His empire was supposed to be feared, not pitied. But the problems kept coming, and he couldn't stop them. Vark stood alone in the command center, staring at the map of his empire. Red dots marked every place where something had gone wrong. There were too many dots now, spreading like a rash. He traced his claw over the map, stopping at Earth. It was a small dot, far away, easy to miss. But Vark didn't miss it anymore. He knew the humans weren't scared. They weren't hiding. They were getting ready, and he was starting to worry they might be stronger than he ever imagined. Deep in a hidden building on Earth, far from prying eyes, a group of people gathered in a plain room. There were no fancy decorations, no waving flags, and no cameras flashing. The room had only a long table, some chairs, and a single light hanging overhead. The people sitting there weren't here to make speeches or show off. They were here because they had lost someone they loved: sisters, brothers, friends, and children. The Zorathians had hurt 10 humans on their dusty planet Zikra, thinking no one would care. But these people cared, and they weren't here to talk. They were here to win. The room was quiet, but the air felt heavy, like the moment before a big storm. At the head of the table sat Kofi, the leader who had lost his best friend May. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, like he could see through walls. Next to him was Mia, the scientist who lost her sister Leela. Her hands were busy sketching plans on a small tablet. Across from her sat Zara, the commander who lost her cousin Aisha. Zara's arms were crossed, her jaw tight, ready for action. Around the table were others: Alina the hacker, Jadon the pilot, Lena the engineer, Raj the general, Amina the scientist, Noah the spy, and Sophia the diplomat. Each had lost someone, and each was ready to fight back in their own way. Kofi spoke first, his voice steady. "The Zorathians think they can hurt us and walk away," he said. "They're wrong. We're not going to shout or send big ships. We're going to be smart. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Everyone nodded. They didn't need loud words or angry promises. They needed a plan, and they were already building one. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about showing the Zorathians that humans weren't weak, that they couldn't be pushed around. Mia raised her hand, holding up her tablet. "I've been working on something," she said. "A device that can shut down Zorathian machines from far away. It's small, like a pebble, but it can stop a whole ship." She showed them a drawing of a tiny gadget no bigger than a coin. It could sneak into Zorathian systems and turn off their power without anyone noticing. The others leaned closer, impressed. "How many can you make?" Zara asked. Mia smiled. "As many as we need." Her voice was quiet, but it carried a strength that made everyone listen. Alina, the hacker who lost her son Carlos, spoke next. "I've already broken into their computers," she said. "I can mess with their banks, their trade routes, even their lights. They won't know it's us." Alina's fingers danced over her laptop as she showed them a map of Zorathian networks. Red dots blinked where she had already caused trouble: dark stations, silent ships, frozen money. "They think it's just glitches," she said, "but we can make it worse." Her eyes gleamed with determination. She wasn't just fighting for Carlos, she was fighting for everyone. Jadden, the pilot who lost his friend Tom, leaned forward. "My ship is ready," he said. "It's fast and quiet, built to slip past their scanners. I can carry Mia's devices to their colonies and drop them without being seen." Jadden's ship wasn't big or shiny like the Zorathian warships. It was small, sleek, and painted to blend into the stars. He had already flown secret missions, dropping tiny gadgets onto Zorathian outposts. "They won't even know I'm there," he said with a grin. The others nodded. Jadden's skills were perfect for their plan. Lena, the engineer who lost her brother Sam, tapped the table. "I've got something too," she said. "Signal jammers. They block Zorathian radios and computers so they can't talk to each other." She held up a small box with blinking lights. "I tested one on a Zorathian drone. It stopped sending signals in seconds." Lena's jammers were like invisible walls, cutting off the Zorathians from their own empire. "If we use these right," she said, "their leaders will be in the dark, confused and scared." The room buzzed with excitement. Lena's idea was another piece of the puzzle. Raj, the general who lost his daughter Priya, spoke in a low voice. "My soldiers are training," he said. "Not for a big war, but for quick, quiet strikes. We can hit their supply lines, take their food and fuel, and leave before they know we're there." Raj's team wasn't large, but they were tough and smart. They knew how to move like shadows, striking fast and disappearing. "We don't need to destroy them," Raj said. "We just need to make them weak." His words were calm, but everyone could feel the strength behind them. Amina, the scientist who lost her nephew Jamal, held up a small device that looked like a shiny marble. "This sends a signal that tricks Zorathian computers," she said. "It makes them think everything's fine, even when it's not." Amina had tested her device on a captured Zorathian robot, making it shut down without a sound. "We can use these to confuse their defenses," she said. "They'll be looking for big attacks, but we'll already be inside." Her quiet voice hid a fierce determination, like a fire burning low but hot. Noah, the spy who lost his sister Emma, leaned back in his chair, his face half hidden in the shadows. "I've been to their colonies," he said. "I know their weak spots, where they store their weapons, where they keep their ships. I can get in, plant devices, and get out without a trace." Noah was like a ghost, moving through Zorathian bases without anyone noticing. He had already left Mia's devices and Lena's jammers in places the Zorathians would never check. "They're not ready for us," he said, his voice soft but sure. Sophia, the diplomat who lost her son Liam, stood up. "I've been talking to other planets," she said. "The Vren, the merchants, the miners, they're all angry about what the Zorathians did. Some are sending us supplies. Others are sharing secrets about Zorathian plans." Sophia's trips across the galaxy were quiet, but they were making a big difference. She wasn't fighting with weapons. She was fighting with words, turning the Zorathians' friends against them. "The galaxy is watching," she said. "And they're starting to choose our side." Kofi looked around the table, his eyes meeting each person. "This is our plan," he said. "We don't need to be loud, we don't need to be big, we just need to be smart. Every device, every hack, every quiet strike, it all adds up. The Zorathians will feel it. They'll know they can't hurt us and walk away." The room was silent for a moment, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before something big, like the quiet before a rocket launches. The group worked late into the night, sharing ideas and making plans. Mia showed them how her devices could be hidden in crates or stuck to ship hulls. Alina mapped out the Zorathian computer systems, pointing out the best places to strike. Jadden sketched flight paths that would keep his ship invisible. Lena handed out her jammers, explaining how to use them. Raj gave orders to his soldiers, telling them to practice moving in the dark. Amina tested her signal device, making sure it was ready. Noah shared a list of Zorathian bases he could sneak into. Sophia wrote messages to send to alien allies, asking for more help. Outside the room, Earth was busy but quiet. No one knew about the secret meeting. There were no news stories, no big announcements. The people in the room wanted it that way. The humans were done waiting. They had made their secret plans, built their clever devices, and trained for action. Now they were ready to move. The Zorathians, with their shiny ships and scaly soldiers, thought they ruled the galaxy. They had hurt 10 humans on their dusty planet Zikra, believing no one would fight back. But the humans were fighting back, not with loud bombs or big armies, but with quiet, smart moves that hit the Zorathians where it hurt most. Outposts stopped working. Soldiers gave up. The humans didn't destroy or harm anyone. They just sent a clear message: stop now or lose more. Far out in the starry sky, a Zorathian outpost sat on a rocky moon. It was a small base filled with machines that sent signals to Zorathian ships. One night the lights in the outpost flickered and went dark. The machines stopped humming. The soldiers inside rushed to check the controls, but nothing worked. They looked outside, expecting to see human ships or flashing lasers, but the sky was empty. No one was there. The soldiers sent a message to Zikra, but it didn't go through. The outpost was cut off, alone in the quiet dark. The humans had struck without making a sound. On another planet covered in red sand, a Zorathian supply station stood tall. It was a busy place, storing food, fuel, and tools for their empire. One morning, the workers arrived to find the doors locked. The computers wouldn't turn on. The fuel pumps were silent. The workers banged on the controls, but nothing happened. They called for help, but their radios only crackled with static. The station was useless, like a toy with no batteries. The workers didn't know it, but tiny human devices, hidden in crates, had shut everything down. The humans didn't fire a single shot. They just took control. Jadon, the pilot who lost his friend Tom, flew his small ship through the stars. His ship was painted black, blending into the night sky. He carried Mia's tiny devices, the ones that could turn off Zorathian machines. Jadon flew close to a Zorathian mining camp, dropping a device into their power system. By the time he was gone, the camp's lights were out and the drills had stopped. The Zorathian miners shouted and argued, but they couldn't fix it. Jadon smiled as he flew away, knowing he'd done his part for Tom. He didn't need to be loud. His quiet flight was enough. Alina, the hacker who lost her son Carlos, sat in a dark room on Earth, her computer glowing. She typed fast, slipping into Zorathian networks like a key into a lock. On a Zorathian trading post, she froze their money systems. Merchants couldn't buy or sell anything. The screens showed errors and the workers panicked. Alina didn't stop there. She sent a signal to a Zorathian communication tower, making it go silent. Ships waiting for orders were left confused, floating in space. Alina's fingers never stopped moving. She was fighting for Carlos, making sure the Zorathians felt the weight of their actions. Across the galaxy, more Zorathian outposts fell quiet. A fuel station on a foggy planet stopped working. Its pumps froze and ships couldn't refuel. A factory making Zorathian weapons shut down, its machines still and cold. A guard post on a snowy asteroid lost its heat, leaving soldiers shivering. Each time, the Zorathians sent teams to investigate, but they found nothing broken. No wires were cut. No parts were missing. It was as if the machines had decided to sleep. The soldiers didn't know that Noah, the spy who lost his sister Emma, had slipped in and planted Lena's signal jammers, cutting off their systems. The humans worked together like pieces of a puzzle. Lena, the engineer who lost her brother Sam, had built those jammers to block Zorathian radios. She sent them to Noah, who hid them in places the Zorathians would never look, inside crates, under floors, even stuck to the bottom of ships. When the jammers turned on, they created invisible walls, stopping signals and leaving Zorathian bases in the dark. Lena tested each jammer in her workshop, making sure it was perfect. She thought of Sam's music, how it brought people together, and she worked to bring humans together in this fight. Raj, the general who lost his daughter Priya, led his soldiers on quiet missions. They didn't march in with loud boots or flashing weapons. They moved like shadows, landing on Zorathian colonies in small, fast ships. On one planet, they sneaked into a food warehouse and locked it tight. The Zorathian guards couldn't get in and their people went hungry. Raj's team didn't hurt anyone. They just left a note: stop now or lose more. The guards read it and looked at each other, confused. They didn't know how to fight an enemy they couldn't see. Amina, the scientist who lost her nephew Jamal, used her clever device to trick Zorathian computers. Her device was small, like a shiny marble, but it could make machines think everything was fine when it was. On a Zorathian space dock where ships were repaired, Amina's device made the computers show fake reports. The workers thought the ships were ready to fly, but when they tried, the engines wouldn't start. The dock was useless, and the Zorathians couldn't figure out why. Amina worked late in her lab, thinking of Jamal's warm meals, making sure her devices kept the Zorathians cold. Sophia, the diplomat who lost her son Liam, was busy talking to other planets. She didn't carry weapons or devices, she carried words. She met with alien leaders like the furry Vren and the six-armed merchants, showing them the video of what happened on Zikra. The Zorathians think they can hurt anyone, she said. Help us show them they're wrong. Her words were calm but powerful, like a river carving a path through stone. The Vren sent food to Earth's teams. The merchants shared maps of Zorathian bases. Sophia was fighting for Liam, turning the galaxy against the Zorathians. The Zorathian soldiers started to give up. On a jungle planet, a small outpost was cut off from its main base. The soldiers there couldn't call for help and their food was running low. One day, a human ship landed nearby. The humans didn't fire weapons or shout threats. They walked up calm and steady and said, "Leave this place. Stop hurting people." The soldiers, tired and hungry, looked at each other. They didn't want to fight anymore. They packed their things and left. The humans didn't cheer or celebrate. They just moved on to the next outpost, ready to do it again. Another time, on a windy planet, a Zorathian guard post stopped working. The soldiers inside found their radios dead and their doors locked. A small screen flickered on, showing a message: "Stop now or lose more." The soldiers tried to fix their systems, but nothing worked. They didn't know that Alina had hacked their computers, locking them out. They didn't know that Noah had planted a jammer nearby. They didn't know that Jadden had flown over, dropping one of Mia's devices. The soldiers were scared, not because of guns, but because they felt alone. They gave up, leaving the post empty. The humans kept moving, striking fast and quiet. A Zorathian water station on a dry planet stopped pumping. The pipes were fine, but the controls were dead, thanks to Amina's tricky device. A Zorathian bank on a busy trade planet found its money locked in computers that wouldn't open. Alina's hacks made sure of that. A Zorathian satellite, used to watch the stars, went blind, its cameras turned off by Lena's jammers. Each strike was small, but together they were like waves wearing down a rock. The Zorathians were losing control, piece by piece. The galaxy started to notice. Aliens who had seen the video from Zikra whispered about the humans. "They're not fighting like others," a Vren trader said. "They're smart, quiet, strong." Merchants stopped selling to Zorathian ships. Miners refused to send them fuel. The Zorathians were used to being feared, but now they were losing friends. Sophia's words had spread, turning the galaxy's eyes toward Earth. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning hearts. On Earth, the people in the secret meeting kept working. Kofi, the leader, made sure everyone stayed focused. He sent messages to each team, checking their progress. Mia built more devices, stacking them in her lab. Alina hacked deeper into Zorathian systems, finding new weak spots. Jadden flew mission after mission, his ship a shadow in the stars. Lena tested her jammers, making them stronger. Raj trained his soldiers to move even faster. Amina sent her devices to Noah, who hid them in new places. Sophia traveled to more planets, gaining more allies. They didn't stop, didn't slow down. They were a team, and they were unstoppable. The Zorathians didn't know how to fight back. They were used to big battles with flashing lasers and roaring ships. But the humans didn't fight that way. They used brains, not brawn. They struck quietly, leaving no trace. Zorathian generals shouted orders, sending ships to search for human armies, but they found nothing. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, like a breeze you can feel but can't catch. The Zorathians started to argue among themselves, unsure what to do. Their empire was slipping, and they couldn't stop it. Each human strike sent the same message: "Stop now or lose more." The Zorathians saw it on screens, heard it from soldiers, found it written on walls. They didn't understand how the humans were doing it. They didn't know about Mia's devices, Alina's hacks, Jadden's flights, Lena's jammers, Raj's soldiers, Amina's tricks, Noah's sneaky missions, or Sophia's words. They didn't know that every human was fighting for someone they loved: Leela, Tom, Aisha, Carlos, May, Sam, Priya, Jamal, Emma, and Liam. The Zorathians thought they had won in that dusty square on Zikra. They were wrong. The humans kept going, their strikes growing bolder. A Zorathian space dock where ships were built shut down completely. Workers stood around, confused as their tools refused to work. A Zorathian training camp lost power, leaving soldiers in the dark. A trade station stopped sending supplies, its computers frozen. Each time the humans left their message: stop now or lose more. The Zorathians were starting to listen. They weren't laughing anymore. They were worried, and the humans were just getting started. The galaxy watched, amazed. The humans weren't conquering planets or starting wars. They were teaching a lesson, showing that they could be strong without being cruel. Aliens who had once ignored Earth now paid attention. The humans are different, a merchant said. They fight for each other. The Zorathians had thought they could push humans around. Now they were learning that humans pushed back, quietly, smartly, and together.